Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Tawassum Promi, back to accompany you again after quite a long while from Team Bertho as the program facilitator or the host of the brand new third season of Ichi-go Ichi-e, episode 1. And a new year, a new season. Even though it is February, it is still not too late to say Happy New Year from Team Bertho though, since new year, new season. So before we begin, I want to mention that we all join in the mourning for those who have died or suffered in the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and most recently in Indonesia. We pray earnestly for all those affected. May Allah protect us from natural calamities, sins, and the signs of Qiyamah, and may protect us from hellfire. With that note, let's get on with our show. So, welcome to Ichi-go Ichi-e, our live series where we invite initiators, activists, and instructors from all over the world to join us virtually, like this on Facebook Live, to keep you guys, our audiences, engaged with valuable discussions and skill based sessions. So, obviously, this project is brought to you by Team Bertho and the Youth Exchange South to South Yes Girls movement. So, if you're wondering, and even though you shouldn't really wonder at this point because we actually repeat this in all our episodes of Ichi-go Ichi-e, and even though a lot of people know it, it's just fun to repeat sometimes because it is a very meaningful thing we go on with. So Ichi-go Ichi-e is a Japanese four-character idiom which describes as treasuring the unrepeatable nature of a moment. Translated as for this time only and once in a lifetime. Just like each of the moments we live is a once in a lifetime moment. So the guest we have today for our brand new season and a brand new episode, we have someone who has been a uh, a marketing activist, a marketing and media professional with more than 7 years of experience in various industries. And she is also a serial podcaster of Uniquely Me Voice and Bangladeshi Trailblazers and ROI Frontrunners. I'm sorry. And she is suddenly working at a startup as the growth marketing lead. And also having lived in Dubai, Philadelphia, and now in Dhaka, she is actually the first Bangladeshi guest we have on Team Bertho, and it really feels really good because I personally had never thought that we would have a Bangladeshi guest on an episode of Ichi-go Ichi-e. So, without further ado, coming with a wave of confidence and positivity with the topic Living Life in Waves, please welcome Tasnim Hasan.
Hi, how are you, Tommy?
Alhamdulillah, Apu, how about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And yeah, it's an amazing series. I have already taken a look at some of the episodes and your content. So, really good work. Thank you so much.
It has been an honor, truly.
It's actually a pleasure being here tonight, and I just wanted to talk about living life in waves. The reason why I talk about living life in waves is because, from a personal perspective as well as from a professional perspective, my life has always been quite different. And when I speak of this is because, of course, of my third culture identity that I do associate myself with, which is when you grow up in one city, then you move from another city, and then you come back to another city that is your hometown. But then at the end of the day, you kind of don't resonate with the culture or like the environment where you actually belong from. And I talk about that a lot in a lot of publications where my articles have gone out, or I talk about youth empowerment, and definitely going to be talking about this tonight. I take a lot of lessons from a lot of experiences from my life so far. And having grown up in Dubai, what I really kind of learned along the way is that you have to learn how to adapt in life. And well, growing up during the course of time, I picked up on a lot of languages. I usually had a very diverse upbringing in terms of like having friends from different backgrounds, right? So what I really appreciate along the way is that always carrying my identity on my sleeve, be it being a Bangladeshi or being someone who was raised somewhere else and then moved to cities, right? The purpose of this episode is solely because I want to tell people, especially the youth, is that you have to take charge of your life and you have to learn how to adapt with time. Because back when I started off as just a young person joining college from school, I never really had that much of support, right? In fact, I had to fight a lot in order to actually start working at my first job when I was just in first year. So I always talk about this from time to time. And first time that I started off working was when I was like finishing off first year and I was moving on to second year. And when we talk about adaptability, people would be surprised to know that my first job was nothing related to marketing. It was nothing related to AI. It was nothing related to whatever I do now, right? It was actually me working at a recruitment industry in the recruitment company. And my role was to do a lot of market research. So that would include of basically making calls, getting the primary data, and then working on the report with my team. During that time, actually, I want to give a big shout out to my first boss who really empowered me and who really, really taught me a lot about the work life. Is, by taking in feedback and always kind of like sitting next to me as a mentor and teaching me how to use even Excel, because I know that the youth today, they kind of do struggle with getting mentors or people along the way. And I always tell them this is that you should always be enthusiastic to learn in life and try learning while you're at the job, definitely. So that's basically my professional life. And I started off like 10, 11 years ago. So during this period of time, Promi, I think you would kind of like not be able to gather the whole dots in this process. Is that not only did I work in the recruitment company, I did work for an automotive company where Amar Chilo, basically to write articles for cars. Like, that was my second internship, and I got my second internship because my first internship, I performed so well. There was like a huge company, and one of the SMEs, they saw me working and asked my boss that what does she do, and then he said that she does this, and then that's exactly how I got another job. So I kept getting offers along the way, and my industries kept changing, and I was able to kind of adapt because I was just 19 or 20. I was able to test out what really worked out for me because I started off pretty early. And I figured out what I really liked. And something that I actually do today is marketing, media, and content, right? So, content really started off for me when I joined a youth magazine in Dubai. And I worked closely with the founders, and I used to cover events. I used to write about concerts or events or conferences, also about recycling. The topics were endless, and I worked with that youth organization for about 2.5 years. So I was always kind of active even as a student. I was always active in terms of having more presence, being a people's person. So I really loved working with a whole team of people. Even in the university life, I keep telling this to people, is that I did not change as a person in the 9 years that I studied in one school, compared to how much I changed as a person during my 4 years of undergrad and then 2 years that I lived in another city, right? So when I talk about this, I'm trying to explain that I'm also studying along the side. I was never a bright student. I never was, and I think my parents kind of came to very good terms with it. They were like, okay, she does what she does, but but I like to always talk about this. We live in a community or society where people compete for GPAs. And I find it very sad because I see a lot of potential in a lot of people nowadays that I interview, and I go like, well, you can let the GPA go a bit, but your skills are good. So I always talk about that, and I love talking about it because I know how hard it is for a person like me to be where I am right now. It was pretty tough, especially when you have a sibling who is really good with studies, right? I mean, that makes it harder. So, always had that under my belt, and I guess that really worked along my favor. So during my 4 years of undergrad, what I really did was I was doing BBA, the typical stereotypical career that the degree that you really pursue. I picked up on that, and on the side I was kind of really active on campus. So I think the first step to leading a team for me was personally when I started off founding a club on campus, and that was the humanitarian club. And the purpose why I founded that with a friend of mine was because I wanted to encourage students to basically participate in more meaningful activities, right? So that would be like volunteering for social causes, that would be for participating in events, spending time in autistic special needs schools, basically, if I were to explain in much more details, right? So, with that vision, when I was in sophomore year, the second year, I founded that club and I formed a team. So, really, really started off my journey there, and I never looked back. Even though my grades really suffered along the way, and I keep telling that to people, that you can never have everything perfectly served on a plate in life. But I really enjoyed the process because there was myself who was attending business competitions, forums, leading a whole club, and studying. And there was a time when I went for a Microsoft competition in Dubai, and the next day I had a finance exam. And I was still thinking that maybe I'm Einstein. I really thought that I would ace my exam, even though I did not really prepare for it. Unfortunately, that year really suffered for me. Like I really, really did not do well in my academics that year. So really had to like stop and think about what I was doing because I was working in a magazine. I was leading a club. I was like a part of like other clubs, and I was constantly doing a lot of extracurriculars. So that basically started off my journey, and then I had to stop during the summertime. I just had to stop and think like, okay, this name, what does that you want to do? So when I got into my third year and my second year of presidency at the club, what I really decided was that I was going to hand over each and every event of the club to a person that I can really trust, right? So I'm really, really grateful for having parents, for having a sibling, and a really supportive group of friends who have always had my back, no matter what. And I wish I could really get to meet them today, but it's just not possible. So what really happened in my third year was I changed the way I was approaching things. I quit internships. I was writing for the magazine, but I was not writing as much. I was given the editorial position by then, so I was like more in charge of like just editing content. And I was also just not very, very active on the forefront of like presidency. I was organizing events, but I was not at the events. I was just delegating everything to my team members, and they were very supportive. So I think when I talk about leadership or like adaptability, I think you should always do I find it funny how I think about it is life is all about A/B testing. So life is about A/B testing. You fail, then you try, then you fail, then you try, right? So that's exactly what I did along the course of my life so far. Are very interestingly, it actually worked out for me. Third year was like much better in terms of my academics because I was focusing more. I knew what was happening at the club, so even though we had like a massive event, I was not bogged down by it because I was not completely leading it. I had like a whole team that was kind of working and doing their own thing, right? Be it PR, marketing, coordinating with others. I think that really got me into the whole zone of compartmentalizing things in life. So yeah, I really worked on it. Third and fourth year of my undergrad were completely focused on that. I decided to focus more towards academics because I had to pass. So I quit everything. Then I was, by my final year, I was just like, no, I'm not doing anything. So I quit my role. I handed it over to someone I really trusted along the way because leaders have to pass on the baton at the end of the day. So I did, and I took a back seat. After graduating, I worked. My first job after graduating was actually in another different industry. So very interestingly, I was working in supply chain and procurement industry. And it sounds kind of weird, right? Like, I mean, recruitment industry, then supply chain, and then like it was quite a whirlwind as well. And I basically worked there for 4 years. During that time, I kept, like, I always wanted to work in media or like study media in general. So I kept at it. I think my parents kind of thought that I gave up on that dream. But but I think after I graduated, sorry, did you say something from me?
No, I actually didn't. I was really lost in your words.
Okay, okay, no worries.
But now
So,
that you mention, I actually want to like add something that
mhm,
when you actually started working, were you really focusing on your skill set
yeah,
more
yeah, I
than
was.
the expertise or the field?
I was focusing more on skills because, when you're young, I think it's very important for you to try out which skill sets kind of fit you the most, right? And you can actually connect the dots when you've crossed a certain time in your life, in your career, that everything you learned in every industry or every job you did so far since you were young, everything does kind of like help you in the long run. For example, just saying that I worked in the recruitment industry, and you know what my boss gave me to do when I was really bored? He actually gave me to edit CVs. And I was like, why am I editing CVs? And he's like, you will learn, you will know why, right? So now when I look at CVs, now when I edit my own CVs, I know that it has to be this way, right?
Right.
Um,
It's
so
like those times when we were back in school or college, we had this whole CV or email application thing in our
yes.
curriculum, and the young ones were like, "Why do we need this? Why is this being included in the syllabus?" And now that we're grown up, we're at our
Yeah,
university level, at our job level, we actually know how that thing works.
exactly. And I was a very proactive person. So I used to really bug I'm saying bug because I think I used to really bug my career advisor on campus as well. I used to always be like, hi Catherine, I need to like edit my CV, and she's like, oh my god, she's here back again. So I always used to kind of get my CVs reviewed and get feedbacks because I had like so many positions to be added along the way, right? I never knew which one to mention, which one to not. And the beauty of it is, when you're applying for a job, make sure you're applying for like the skills, right? Eventually, that you really want to focus on when you're applying for a particular job, right? So that's basically it. When you're young, you can always try out what kind of industry, what kind of job really suits you. And that's exactly what I did, right? So I worked in supply chain for 4 years. During that time period, I always knew that I wanted to study media. So I started applying for masters in media, and I got into quite a bit of colleges along the time. So I got into three universities in Netherlands, three in the US, and I applied like in a lot of other colleges. And I studied for GREs by myself. So I used to do a full time job, go home, study for GREs, study for IELTS. I even gave TOEFL. I was taking French classes. So, like, I was all over the place. But I knew that I eventually wanted to switch my career. And it took a while. But honestly, I keep telling people that let it be a little later. You should always have work experience before you kind of approach post graduation as well. So 4 years later, I moved into another phase of my life, which is the another wave of life, which is, I moved to Philadelphia, and I never lived without my parents. In my late 20s, I was in my late 20s, and I was just like, I never lived without my family. I never really traveled, miles away from them. So that was a big challenge for me, definitely, but amazing experience. I learned so much at the, during my master's course, because there's a big difference between studying the UK syllabus versus the US syllabus, right? Like the way they teach you is way different, and I've studied both, so I know that, it's there's a stark difference between it. So yeah, when I was in the US, definitely learned a lot on the job, because I think we kind of underestimate the fact that, the US education system is not too it's like too easy, but it is not. They just put you in a situation where they'll be like, go find an organization, work with them, write a report about them, present it to us in class. And being an international student, it's not very easy to find an organization, like, as soon as you land, right? Like, I don't know anyone. So I think that was a big learning curve for me. I basically also got stuck during the pandemic, right? Because just before I graduated, the pandemic hit. Our classes went virtual. I couldn't see my parents for like nearly 2 years, and I was just confined in my dorm room, right? So learned a lot during that time. Yeah, I learned a lot during that time. And 2020 was exactly the year when everything turned around for me after graduation. I decided to start a podcast with my friend. My friend and I, we both were, graduating from media, and we were just bored. We were applying for jobs, looking for jobs for like a few months, and then she was like, "Hey, let's do a podcast." So we kind of like decided upon the topic. We used to do scripting. We used to find guests, and it was called Uniquely Me Voice, the one that you mentioned. It really started off with just reaching out to people. Either I knew them, or I did not know them. Sometimes I got lucky with the guests, sometimes I did not. So that was also more like an A/B testing for me, because I learned audio production during my master's course. And that was the most challenging course ever, because that was a male dominant course. We were like three or four girls there. And we really had a tough time learning the board. We had a tough time, like recording. We had our recording rooms, but due to pandemic they closed down everything, so we had to like record on our laptop. And I was like nearing, I really thought I would fail in that course, but somehow passed it. And then the irony right now is that I kind of do podcasting now, right? That was the most challenging course of my master's degree, but really started working on it. So yeah, Uniquely Me Voice was focusing on South Asian community. We partnered with a lot of people from different professional backgrounds, right? And then I did a whole spin-off later, a few months later. I started off Bangladeshi Trailblazers. That's because actually I noticed that there are a lot of Bangladeshis in Bangladesh and beyond who have been doing some amazing work, and they need to be celebrated, right? They need to be talked about. So that's exactly what I focused on. And Bangladeshi Trailblazers so far has 44 episodes. So 44 episodes so far. There are three more pending. So I've already recorded with three of them, three people, and it's still in the editing process. And yeah, connecting the dots. That's one of my learnings, that sometimes the most challenging thing in your life can become your career. It can really become your career.
Yeah,
And
I relate to
yes,
that though.
tell
I
me.
definitely relate to that fact because I used to be really scared of maths. Well, not really scared. It's just that I did not have the skill set you need to be good at mathematics. But I am studying computer science right now.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was a huge turn. And even my parents mentioned that from time to time that you were so scared of mathematics and look where you are now. You're studying computer science and engineering where it is like 50 to 60% maths. The whole course is like standing on mathematics.
Exactly.
So that is obviously the turning point of my life and obviously to a lot of people because that's how you just learn and that's just how you flourish.
Exactly, right? So, I mean, you understand that better now. So, yeah, that's basically my journey. A lot of people think that to get started, you need to have perfect things. Like you need to have a perfect guest list, you need to have perfect audio equipment, you need to have the perfect space. It's never about that. If you don't get started, nobody's going to start it for you. And I apply that even in my personal life, that, if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it for you. And Yeah, so that's exactly where my life kind of really took a turn during the pandemic in 2021, where my H1B did not work out. I was working for a tech company in the US as well. And then I had to move back to the to Bangladesh, basically. In between, I kind of moved to Dubai because my family was also moving with me to Bangladesh. So yeah, 2021 was a lot of traveling for me. I went to New York quite a few times. I forgot the count. And then I went to DC once, solo. And then I went to New Jersey twice. So New Jersey twice because of work. So I covered the East Coast in general just after the pandemic kind of got a little better. And then I moved to Dubai, and then I moved to Dhaka. It's not even been 2 years that I've been in Dhaka, but has been quite an experience. Yeah, and surprisingly, I'm currently the position I'm at marcopolo.ai. I also do produce and host a podcast called ROI Frontrunners that basically focuses on marketing experts, marketing agencies, e-commerce, and so much more. So I love doing what I do, and I kind of feel like, media degree, BBA, focusing on marketing and management, podcasting, everything kind of comes together for me right now in life, and it really pays off. And I take life just the way how I take my professional life. I really think that if you're not passionate about things in life, you really do not feel like, it does not give you much strength. And Yeah, that's about my professional life. Adding to my personal life, well, as I mentioned, I'm a third culture adult. So third culture spectrum is like, people who are born in one city, they grow up in another city, and then they move cities. That's exactly how I resonate myself with. I keep telling people, Jay, I don't resonate myself being a complete Bangladeshi because I grew up in the Middle East, right? So there's a bit of that side to myself. And then I also lived in Philadelphia for a bit, which I really, really resonate with, because that's a part of me that kind of stayed, right? So when you move cities, when you kind of like change places, you learn so much that you no longer can like resonate with one place. I carry each and every identity of myself is like associated with every city and every phase of life, right? I was different when I was living in Dubai. I am different now. I was different when I was in the US. So you kind of change through life, and I really keep encouraging the youth to always be traveling quite a bit, because you learn so much. Learn languages, go travel. I mean, I'm not saying you need to like travel to like Europe or something, but start small, right? Because you learn so much. Meet new people who really come from different kind of walks of life. They can be someone who's way older to you, they can be someone who's way younger to you. In fact, fun fact is that I really don't gel well with people my age. I usually have friends who are either older to me, or I actually gel well with the youth more. So, like I kind of resonate with that a lot, because I never had like a group of friends. I had like friends, but they were like from different colleges, they were from different cities, they were from, like it's scattered. So I really celebrate myself to be like that, that I am like that. I'm never living in one place or staying in one place. Last year was amazing because I traveled around Bangladesh 7 times. And, whenever I used to come for vacation over here in Bangladesh, I would never go, travel as much as I did last year. So I traveled to a lot of places in Bangladesh, and I got to see so many beautiful places in Bangladesh. And it's been an amazing experience. So yeah, I keep telling everybody that apply change and adaptability in your life, like be it professional or be it personal. Especially, I take that learning from my life, right? I take that learning from every aspect of my life. I keep saying that, if you're not changing, then there's something wrong, because you can never be the same, right? Change is the only constant. And if you're not changing, then what is the purpose of living? Better yourselves. And also, I keep telling younger people is that try experimenting out careers way early in life, because that's exactly when you find out what's working for you, what's not. If you're in my age group right now, you should know what you want to do, you should know what you really really want to focus on. So that's a big learning that I always take. And another fun fact is, I'm a very talkative person, but most of my closest people that I really, really love, like who are very dear to my life, are very private and very introverted people. So I always, I always, my friends always keep telling me that, whenever you're not around, it's like something's missing, because we don't get to meet. Like, like my group of friends, they don't meet up. So I kind of take that, as a badge of honor, because I'm like, oh my God, I miss you guys so much, right? So yeah, it's a very scattered session. And I hope you can pick up a lot of lessons from this very scattered episode of mine. Maybe because I've learned so much along, the course of life so far, I kind of really get excited to talk about it quite a bit. So yeah.
Well, to be honest, it wasn't that much scattered because you had already mentioned about the thing about connecting the dots. And
Mm.
since you already mentioned that beforehand, I was already looking for the dots. Like she's focusing on the skill set and she's
Yeah.
getting like scouted for her skill sets. Well, that leads to one question that I have in mind
Mhm.
is that you said that you were really interested in media, right? You actually wanted
Mhm.
to study media. And being in media includes a lot of things, like, of course, skills like podcasting or hosting or public speaking or maybe even writing. So let's just assume that one person just wants to pursue media and they're not a good writer, but it is necessary for them to be a good writer in order to pursue media. So in that case, would you suggest that person to particularly focus on the writing skill instead of just polishing the skills that she already has or possesses? What do you think about that?
So it's a good question, and I'm just going to repeat it in case it's kind of much more clear. So you're asking me, is it important for them to know writing skills,
Sort of,
right?
but also if they want to like polish their writing skills, would that has to be the single most goal they have to be set upon for the like next 5 or 6 months, let's just say.
No. I don't see it as a big thing that they need to focus on, because see, when we talk about media and communications in general, there's a lot of aspect, there's like so much to learn, so much you can pick up on. For example, I started off as a writer. My first article was published on the national newspaper. That's where I started off, right? But then now when you look at it, I work behind the scenes now, right? Or I host a podcast. My journey was very varied. So I feel like if somebody wants to pursue media, it's not like they have to know how to write. They have to know how to write critical, they have to know how to do critical analysis, and they have to know how to do critical writing, basically. But I don't really think they should be focusing on writing. For example, if they are good with audio production, I think they should go and specialize, get specialized on that field. If they are basically wanting to do something behind the scenes, they can definitely do that. It's not very necessary for them to know writing, content writing in general, unless they want to step into the world of fictional writing, or they want to step into media, which is the mass comms, like copywriting, working for an agency, right? So when we talk about media in general, it's a huge, it has a lot of subsections, right? Do you want to do audio production? Do you want to do video production? Do you want to get into media agency? Do you want to kind of get into what do you say, filmmaking, right? You can actually do that. You can actually get into a very specific niche media degree if you want, right? So that's that. I hope that
Okay,
answers your question.
yeah, that very much clears it up. So, of course, it was a really great session, not gonna lie, and I was personally very much interested because since I was really young, I had already struggled with like, what am I really interested in? Because being really young, I grew up being interested in wrestling, and you're gonna be very, very amazed to know that when a 5-year old or a 6-year old wants to be a prince or princess, I wanted to be a wrestler. So, growing up, I got interested in books, I got interested in writing, I got interested in a lot of stuff, and my hobbies are currently colliding with each other. And at this point, me and a lot of my friends don't know if it's their hobby or if it's a skill that they possess, if they can use it to do
Mhm.
something in, say, particular field as a
Ex-
workspace. So,
so
figuring out
yeah.
is
Exactly. And you should know what you want to do because, for example, I've talked a lot about my professional life and my personal life, right? But for example, I'm a big fan of board games, right? Like Ludo and Uno and much more like Catan and things like that. So I like board games, but I don't want to get into that field, right? But that's more of a hobby for me. You should know what you want to pursue as a career, and you should know what you want to do as a hobby. And I think having both of them is very, very healthy. If you don't have it, then it's a bit of it's quite exhausting if you're only focusing on things that are related to your professional career only.
Yeah, because I have personally already experienced that when you try to make something out of your hobby, when that thought gets into your head that I have to earn through my hobby, a lot of people has
Mhm.
that mindset. This is my hobby, I am skilled in this, I should earn through this. And somehow they ruin it for themselves. And they just end up not liking it anymore. It's just falling out of love.
It's because I have one thought on it, is because it's mostly because we kind of don't understand that there are a lot of things that need to be taken care of when you are basically turning your hobby into a profession, right? Because when you're doing it as a hobby, you don't want to achieve goals, or you don't have like um, certain metrics to kind of complete. You're just doing it mindlessly, right? You're not having a goal. But exactly when you burn out is when you start feeling like, oh, it has to have a goal. Oh, I have to have this many likes on my page to be, more famous, or these are kind of metrics. When you start like focusing on these kind of metrics, that's exactly when you kind of realize that, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe this hobby is getting exhausting for me. But as soon as you lift off the metrics, then that's exactly when you love doing what you do sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it
It's
needs to be taken care of.
it's like the small things, like a
Yeah,
reader, and somehow the reader sets a goal that I have to read every single day. I have to read at least 50 pages a day. That somehow ruins it for them because it's not a hobby anymore. It's slowly becoming a goal, an achievement that you want to touch someday. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And like, for example, we live in a hyper connective world, right? For example, there are people who review books, as you mentioned about book reading. Once you become a book reviewer, imagine you're on a rush to finish a certain pages, and then that no longer is for pleasure. It's just because you want to fill up your social media, right? Because you have to review a book. So that's exactly when it kind of gets exhausting for people. But I always think that you should know what are your hobbies and what is your profession. You should segregate that very, very carefully, and be approaching it with full heart, whatever you do.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a really big insight. So we have a question on screen here, and the question for you is, what is your definition of success?
What is my definition of success? Well, from a personal perspective, I definitely feel like my definition of success is when I'm happy doing whatever I'm doing right now, right? Money will come and go, to be honest, but the kind of mental satisfaction that you have when you do what you love or something that you know, right? I think that kind of really, really kind of it plays off in the long term. And success is very subjective. Success can be, being successful in your personal life. It can be being successful in your professional life. It could be a mix of both, right? But for me, I think my definition of success is when you are able to balance off your personal and professional life, and you're surrounded by your loved ones, who are there, because there's no there's no I can't find the word. um there's no satisfaction in succeeding if you don't really have people close to you who will be celebrating with you in the long run, right? I mean, imagine you're successful, you're like super, super rich or whatever, but then you don't really have friends. You don't really have like someone who's going to be there to celebrate that with you, right? That includes your parents as well. So if they don't see that, then what's the point of success in this case? So always have a tribe of people who are always going to be around you, definitely, authentically, and Also, success is very subjective. I think my definition kind of really changes with time. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. It's a very definitive and
It
very
very
subjective
much does,
question.
and it kind of matched up with my version as well. I always say that success is like loving what you're doing. If you do
Yeah,
something for the rest of your life, if you end up loving it, if you stay being in love with it, that's success, in my opinion.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for that answer. And throughout the whole session, we truly learned a lot of stuff, a lot of insights, and it was a really interesting journey throughout this 45 minutes, really. So I'm really sad we have to end in a few minutes,
Yes.
but before ending, I want to ask you for your insight. Like, how's it like being here with us today with Team Bertho? And of course, you know the initiatives we're carrying out and we're connecting everyone in this wonderful bond, this connection. What do you think about this connection and this journey with us?
So, well, number one, I really like Team Bertho because I feel like it celebrates the fact that you not only win in life, you also fail, but that is completely okay. It is okay to fail in life. I think we grew up in a culture where, success is always like, oh, you have to be first or second, right? So that's something that I really resonate with. And coming to this show tonight has been very um, has been an honor, and I definitely always speak for people who are much younger to me because I feel like Team Bertho's vision and my vision kind of goes hand in hand in terms of like always getting the message across to younger generations, and I hope they kind of learn from it because we live at a very fast-paced life right now. I mean, come on, ChatGPT is taking over, right? It's been all over the news, so you have to catch up. So I always see an organization like Team Bertho sharing the kind of vision that I definitely move on with, and I've always resonated with. So thank you so much. Thank you, Promi.
It has been our pleasure. It has been my pleasure to host this session with you, and it has been, of course, Team Bertha's pleasure to have you as a guest to share your story. Just like Team Bertha always says, that every single story matters, and your life resonates with a lot of stories, giving birth to this huge journey, huge experience overall, which is very satisfying to hear. And thank you so much, Apple, for
Thank
being
you.
here with us to like take out some time from your schedule and just sit here for a good 47 minutes and talk about life. It couldn't get any better, really.
Thank you so much for
Okay.
having me.
Okay, so I have to close up the show right here, even though I'm pretty much sad too, because to be honest, um, as Apple always said, in this hyperactive world, you gotta figure out a lot of things. You gotta figure out a lot of things about yourself, really. Knowing yourself, the things you're good at, the things you're bad at. And this reminds me of the questions we usually get in some forms of CVs where they usually ask, list your five strong point or list your five weak points. So to answer those, it is very much important to know yourself very well. So basically, I guess that was the message of our today's session, that know yourself. You have to know yourself if you want to achieve your version of success. So, with that note, I guess we will close up right here. What do I add as a final note? If I could add as a final note, yes, of course, please be kind to animals. I actually have a few cats coming to my house recently, and our neighbor just kicked one out, and I'm pretty much bummed out about it. So please be kind to animals. And yes, love yourself, love myself, peace. We're gonna end the show right here. Bye bye.